Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we have a standalone episode of the 1962 film Santo versus the Vampire Women. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, editor of this summer's Castle of Horror anthology and the upcoming Young Captain Nemo Quest for the Nautilus. With me from Austin is Tony Savaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. From the Rio Grande Valley, Texas Institute of Letters inductee David Bowles is a Mexican-American author and translator from South Texas, where he teaches at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. His graphic novel, Clockwork Curandera, illustrated by the Pura Beltre winner Raul Gonzalez, will be published in 2020. Say hello, David.
Hola. Professor Olaf, llamando a Santo. Rápido, Santo.
I am so excited to talk about Santo. I'm telling you. All right, now get this. We have two guests this week. Joya is on sabbaticals. We have two guests this week from the famed horror podcast, Women in Caskets. Dawn Humphrey does the So You Don't Have To and editorial features of the Women in Caskets podcast and occasionally streams video games on Twitch. Say hello, Dawn.
Hello and greetings and salutations.
Hello and greetings and salutations to you as well. And her fellow podcast, Jen Brown, is a Latinx actor known for her work on several popular Rooster Teeth, there it is again, series Red vs. Blue, Ruby, Day 5, and more, as well as the voice of Harley Quinn for the DCUO. Hey, Jen.
Greetings. Howdy.
Howdy. Okay, that was a lot to get through. I'm so excited that y'all are here because I, for one, have been listening to Women in Caskets for years, and I am so stoked to talk about anything with you guys.
Aww.
That's sweet.
That is very, very nice. We really appreciate all of the flattery.
It's the crossover episode that everyone's waiting for.
Yes. Okay, so here it is. Santo versus Las Mujeres Vampiro, also known as Samson versus the Vampire Women, which is the way I saw it when I was a kid.
Oh my gosh.
A 19...
Samson, because he can't be a saint, he's got to be Samson.
A lot of you know this movie because it was also a 1995 episode of Mystery Science Theater 3000, and that version is the one that was called Samson versus the Vampire Women, which was brought by to the U.S. by K. Gordon Murray, who is the guy who is most responsible for bringing Mexican horror to the United States, although, you know, he gave it the curious treatment that he did. So I want to get you guys opening thoughts. Let's do Tony, you've been missing. Let's do Tony, Dawn, David, and Jen, and then we'll go into the discussion really quick. And tell me which version you saw. I'm dying to know like what you watched. So we'll start with Tony. Tony, what are your opening thoughts of Santo versus the Vampire Women?
I really dig this movie. Anytime there's a chance to watch Santo do his business, being a hero in a silver mask, I'm down with that. I did have to watch the MST3K version, unfortunately. I prefer to watch, nothing wrong with MST3K. For me, I just prefer to watch the original, but I couldn't find that in time because time was running out because I had been at Fantastic Fest. So that's the version I watched. Of course, it's probably a little bit edited and, a little distracting with the voices over it, but it still was a hell of a lot of fun.
It's a great episode of MST3K. I mean,
right.
It's not. It's a pretty good one. Dawn. So first of all, welcome. Yeah, just give me your opening thoughts, like where your head is generally at. If you run into somebody on the train that says, what do you think of El Santo versus the Vampire Women? What are your thoughts?
I'd say it is a great and wonderful movie. It is a really good example of the movies that they were bringing to the United States. Jen and I sat down and we watched the American dubbed version. We found a copy of that online.
Mm-hmm.
So it had some inconsistency in the names, and the syncing of audio was interesting, and it had all those lovely little quirks that those movies are kind of known for. And so it was a really fun watch until it ground to a halt to do like the wrestling. Like, I know that some people are like really into the wrestling, but I was just kind of like, I want to get back to the movie, but we're going to stop for, 10, 15 minutes twice and just watch wrestling matches, which has its own kind of charm. Yes, but
Right.
Twice. Yes. No, you nailed it. It is exactly twice. David, what are your thoughts?
So I first saw this when I was a kid on Mexican TV. And I was like a lot of Mexican American kids, a lot of Mexican American boys growing up in the 70s and 80s when these things were being rerun on Mexican TV, like just, fascinated by all the monsters and so forth. And it's one of the spookiest of the Santo films. And I remember I want to say I was like maybe 12 or 13 when I saw this, like on a Saturday afternoon. I live on the border, and we get Mexican channels, the good old days when you would use rabbit ears, and I probably sat down with my dad and watched it. And all the sexy women was an awkward thing to be watching with your dad when you're 12 or 13.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I loved it. I was, even as a kid, kind of annoyed by the long lucha libre scenes, but that was part of what was the selling point for these films early on. There's less and less of it as you get into the 70s with his films. But early on, it was an excuse to see, El Santo doing some professional wrestling. And they're actually, especially in the second fight where he's fighting against one of these 200-year-old henchmen who inexplicably knows karate and all of the lucha libre moves. This is really amazing. I get there in the crypt. He's just been keeping up. I'm not sure how with all of the latest innovations. I just love when El Santo is almost completely knocked out and it's his his corner guy is all, hey dude, are you sure you want to keep going? He's really like beating the shit out of you, and he's like, yeah, he's using karate chops that are like that are mortal. They're mortal blows, and it's just great. And I loved the film as a kid. I had a good time watching it this time. I mean, these films were. I mean, the year before this one, he made it was the same this year. Was this the 62 or the 62? The 1961, he made like 5 of these films. It was just, they were churning them out. So there wasn't a lot of care taken with, plotting and the discovery of where the crypt is just like, it's just at the end, the police officer's like, just push yourself a little more there, Professor Orlov. And he figures it out. So there's a lot of contrivance and so forth, but they're fun films. And this is early on in the cinematographic kind of like universe that changed El Santo into a superhero and made him memorable for boys for the next 5 decades. So it was really a lot of fun revisiting it.
Well, thank you. Jen, what are your thoughts?
Oh my gosh. Well, I had, for some reason, had not seen this movie before. So honestly, my first thoughts were, oh yay, the feminist Dracula I always wanted and never knew I needed so badly, except I know for a fact it's not going to end the way I prefer. But the way it was starting everything, I was like, oh, I want this movie to end where Diana runs away with the vampire women.
Yeah, where she's like, enough of this being gaslighted.
Comes into the picture, but I knew that was not going to be the case.
Yeah, not in a Mexican film from 1962. It wasn't. Nope.
Exactly. Well, we both there's that whole opening which Don and I both were living for. This sort of lesbian vampire witches. It was just everything I wanted.
Yeah, they got their own coven. They, in fact, why don't you tell us about that opening, because I really want to get in. Let me just say 10 seconds. I love the look of this. I just want to run around in the first 10 minutes of this movie. Honestly, can you imagine a dark ride that went through the kick-ass female vampire coven meeting that they're having? Just how awesome this whole thing is. Anyway, tell us what's going on in this opening.
Oh my, it's amazing. Everything about it is amazing. Even though it's black and white, they utilize the entire space, so everything just looks very, very creepy, but not cheap. Nothing looks cheap to me in this opening scene. It feels very stylized. I love the crackling on their skin. So basically, it's an underground crypt.
Yes.
Yep.
And there's lots of wandering hallways and not pillars, but sort of like columny, yeah. Cobwebs and smoke kind of stuff everywhere, and all these tombs, and then this really crackly skinned crispy vampire witch lady starts going on and on about her coven, and all these witches it really feels like a coven. I know they're not, I know they're actually vampires.
It's a coven. Vampires have covens.
Yeah,
I mean, they are so down. Well, and her name is variously called Tundra or Tundra. Doesn't
That's
matter.
what I was going to say. They change her name constantly.
Right. It's because it's Tundra. And I should have mentioned that I watched this in Spanish today. Again, I rewatched it on YouTube.
Oh, fabulous.
It's Tundra. Her name is Tundra, which just sounds so awesome in Spanish. Tundra.
That's what I would have really loved to find a Spanish version, but we could not find it. We wanted the Spanish version, but
she just gives this lovely speech.
Yeah, there's the Spanish version on
man's corruption,
but not subtitles.
So beautiful.
Taking over the world.
Well, I tell you what, and in Spanish, it's really
men
awesome
because they're evil, and it's so beautiful.
Hey guys, and see, the thing that you miss when you don't hear it in Spanish is they're using this like really kind of flowery, archaic Spanish. It does sound like they're from 200 years ago the way they're talking. It's really, really lovely and amazing, and the honorifics they use with each other, that they use vosotros to instead of ustedes to say you guys, you all. It's just really, really lovely and flowery, and the way Tundra addresses Sorina later on, Queen Sorina, is so it's just really, really cool. That all of that stuff is lovely in Spanish.
Man, see, I wish we could have found
a subtitle.
Yeah,
you can get it on DVD.
Bums me out.
Like I have a DVD of it in Spanish. I mean, I didn't crack it out this time because I knew I could stream the dub, but scream. What's
you can scream the Spanish out loud. Your wife is beating you.
Tundra comes out first, and then the coven comes after her, and Queen Zorina is in the coffin, and she's like, here's the deal, we're going to give everybody their beauty back, and then in honor of Satan, who Queen Zorina is going to give up her crown and go be with Satan forever, we're gonna go and find Zorina's living successor. Blah 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 blah. But anyway, it's and the devil's shadow appears. David, you and I have, oh my God, the devil's so
good.
You and I have talked a lot, David, about how Mexican horror movies. I mean, God, I love these things. I would watch something like this 10 times, like before I had to deal with anything new. Honestly, because there's just something so pure and perfect and wonderful about the way these.
Yeah, the atmospherics are great. The atmospherics are spot on.
And it's very simple. I like I like what it was Jen. Are you the one who said that you kind of wish this had the ending of The Hunger, where Catherine Deneuve just runs off with? Sure.
Yes.
Setting that aside, setting the horrible, violent ending aside of this film. Having said all that, what I love is the purity of it. It's like they're witches, they worship Satan, it's black and white, there's like vampire, there's like no irony. Irony in this universe does not exist. It's this
well, it would destroy the film.
I guess so.
No, everybody is like very, very I mean, from villains to good guys are all what they appear to be. It's all very straightforward. I mean, the only person that has any like hint of something else is the gaslighting father of Diana, who you just want to like slap a couple of times.
Okay.
Trust me, you're just seeing shit. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
Oh wait, Dawn, you're a little quiet.
Sorry. I was gonna say, you mean the guy that I called Professor Gaslight in all of my notes?
Yes, that's the guy, Professor Gaslight. That's the good translation of his name.
So in fact, let me get you to that point, and Dawn, then you can explain to us what the hell is going on with Dr. Gaslight, because in a very, very well appointed upper middle class neighborhood somewhere in Mexico, Professor Orloff, which honest to God sounds like a vampire name. Professor
It really does.
Professor Orloff is very worried because he's been translating some hieroglyphics and he knows that his hot 21-year-old daughter, who has a wicked bat tattoo on her shoulder, is bound to become
I guess
the
it's a
new-
birthmark, really, Jason. But yeah,
Yes, I know, but it's neat, you know.
it is pretty cool.
She basically is bound to become the new leader of a big witch coven. He's worried about that, so much so that, you know, there's like 4 people in this town. There's the professor, there's some police officers, there's an inspector, and there's a superhero, and they all know one another. And, you know, because they're all like, and this is what La Sociedad is like, right? Just a tiny little, but he knows about this. And tell me a little bit about all the things he is doing to prepare his daughter for this tremendous danger that she is in.
Not a goddamn thing.
It's just better
I
just to
mean,
keep her in
if
the
we're
dark.
being completely honest, he has kept her completely in the dark about everything.
Yeah.
He knows these vampires are coming for her. He
Yep.
knows that she is like the reincarnation of the woman who was originally supposed to succeed the queen.
You mean
Yes.
Amy Winehouse?
Amy Winehouse.
Yeah,
The
the
queen!
tattoo.
The queen looks like Amy Winehouse.
Yes, she does.
She
totally does,
100% looks like Amy Winehouse.
You mean Queen Sorina does?
Well, and then
I
they
guess that's
worked in a
true.
little.
Yeah.
There's some extra continuity that they're bogging us down with. Where they're like, well, 200 years ago there was going to be another person
Yeah,
that
Rebecca.
was going to take
Yeah.
over, but that didn't work out because of the stupid.
Because
I don't
Santo's
know.
ancestor,
Because Santo's
Yeah.
ancestor.
Santo's
Santo also
ancestor.
is mentioned in the hieroglyphics,
Yep.
which is the most
Which is-
preposterous.
And exactly, he's an Egyptologist. In the Spanish version, it's really clear these Egyptologists. What the fuck does Egyptology have to do with something that happened 200 years ago in Mexico? Why would it be contained in hieroglyphs?
Oh, maybe if Professor Gaslight had like an actual conversation with his daughter, we might have found out the answer to that question. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Really,
He
it's
just
a
likes to
really
fiddle around
solid
with this.
question. I mean, what does she want, right? You know, you're totally right. I feel like my eyes are opening the more I think about this. Like, we don't know what the hell Diana wants, right? We know that
No.
she plays, you know, like Elizabeth in Pride and Prejudice. She plays piano, you know, and but we don't know what she wants. I'm not aware that she's studying anything or that she's having nightmares or anything.
Well, I know what
Um,
her husband, what her fiance wants, because he tells her to her face and then like confirms it with her father. Then pretty soon we'll be married, and then I will be ordering you about. Like, holy shit, really? And she just smiles. Oh, that's so cute, and just goes
Yeah.
off to bed. Go off to bed now, Diana. The men talk. Just I can understand. I also wanted her to become the queen of the vampires.
Yeah, and like
I
from
was like,
minute
fuck these
one-
guys. Go be queen of the vampires.
wow.
And from minute one, she knows something weird is happening because we've got Tundra outside the window doing like the crazy eye stare thing
Yeah.
that she can feel, and she clearly feels that something's happening. And her father's
Yes.
like, "Oh no, honey, you just have a case of the vapors. Why don't you go take a nap?"
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
In Spanish, he's all like, maybe there was like a moth fluttering outside, and the moonlight
Yes.
glinted off of it, and you're like, oh, Jesus.
Right, in the English they say butterfly. Oh, it's just a
butterfly.
butterfly. You can believe me. There's nothing to worry about. By the way, he says the same thing to the police officer. Listen, police officer, I'm very, very worried. I can't explain why. And the officer goes, "Well, what's troubling you?" He goes, "Don't ask me any more questions." It's the strangest. Like,
But you know what makes it even okay? So here's what makes it even worse. So in Spanish, the guy who's playing Professor Orloff, Augusto Benedico, is from Spain. So everybody else is speaking with a Mexican accent. He's speaking with like this like peninsular accent, and so he sounds more of a dick to begin with.
Really?
So
That's
he's
interesting.
like lording it over everybody else. And then
Well, Tundra is Peruvian, for what it's worth.
yes,
Ophelia Montesco is Peruvian, and she died young. I mean, she died like in her 40s or 50s. I can't remember. But I don't know any of these other actors.
well, yeah, like Maria Duval, the one who plays Diana,
Mm-hmm.
she was a singer, an incredible singer in like the 50s and 60s and 70s.
Well, why didn't they have her sing? They have a guy in the nightclub. Think how much cooler it would be if her B story was that she's a singer at the nightclub that they go to all the time.
That would have made sense.
Because, by the way, these guys got nothing to do other than the professor who has hieroglyphics to read. Everybody else has literally nothing to do. And
Santo's got to like wrestle.
Right. Yes. Oh, she could have been the ring girl.
Oh, hey, what about the part where the professor goes, "So, Santo, are you going to be able to be at my daughter's birthday party tomorrow night?" He's like, "No, I have other plans, but I've taken." Motherfucker, what other plans do you have?
We know what the other plans are. Not to be around the professor. It's like, no, I have to wash my mask or tights or anything not around you, Professor.
Because I'm going to punch you in the face. Yes.
Oh my God!
I might suplex you if I hang out with you any longer.
You know what I was just thinking of when you think about The Witch, right? That film that came out 2 years ago.
Oh yeah.
It had a very similar. I mean, that's
gaslighting kind of thing.
That's a really good movie. But my point is, that one has the end that Jen is looking for.
Yeah.
That would have been so nice. Yeah.
You could do a straight, creepy, even high contrast black and white. Wouldn't bother me. Remake of this, but that ended with, let's dump this.
I want it.
Yeah. And then you just turn Santo into another henchman, right? So he kills the one henchman in the ring, and he becomes the
if
third.
You want to be complicated about it, Santo could even decide, you know what, I understand now what it is that you want, and I'm going to let her go. Because he could decide that the boyfriend is a thug. He could also decide that he has respect for, maybe because whatever, it's kind of forgivable that Professor Orloff is overprotective, but the fact that he's going to hand her off to a boyfriend who's equally overprotective is troublesome. So Santo helping.
Yeah, I really like. The best ending for this would have been Diana going off to join the coven to eventually lead the coven, and then like Santo becomes like her right-hand henchman.
Yes.
Like they just all take over. They all decide, you know what, this vampire thing, that's kind of right. We're gonna down with men's corruption and nuclear power. It's like random references to nuclear power. I don't know if that was just something.
It's because of the comic book that got started in the 50s about El Santo. It was about combating like nuclear things, atomic monsters, and they're making reference to it.
Also in context.
Go on. Sorry.
Also
go ahead,
in context, though, at Fantastic Fest, we watched Ship of Monsters, and the lead in that was anti-nuclear because they were going to build a nuclear plant, and luckily, Abraham, who hosted a really excellent lecture on Mexican horror, said he was really glad that there wasn't a nuclear plant, that it probably would have been really bad, especially with all earthquakes and stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, could this be run? Hey, how would this turn out? But, and so the lead in Ship of Monsters was often seen with I think it was Ship of Monsters. No, wait, no. It wasn't that one.
But Ship of Monsters is from 1960, Mexican.
Yeah, but it wasn't that. It was Trampa Infernal, I think.
Okay.
Well, one of the leads was always seen with like an anti-nuclear pin, which that was 80s, so that was way later. I saw 30-something movies, so it's kind of a blur right now.
Yeah,
so that that also ties back in to all of that. But
so there's
at this time, it's probably come from the comics, though.
There's a science fiction-y fear, and there's also this classic black and white anti-satanic Catholic fear. I didn't hear who it was. Jen or Dawn, you were going to say something.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was, but my brain was just going off on the feminist remake version of this film, and I was like, I really want Issa Lopez to direct this.
Oh, nice. Oh, that would be so good.
Oh, yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. I was just thinking about it because we just saw her at Fantastic Fest. Tony, speaking of Fantastic Fest, and Tigers Are Not Afraid just came out, so now everyone knows how amazing and brilliant she is. How incredible!
I say we pitch it to her.
Right, we should pitch Issa.
Get right. Get right
because
on
because we're knocking some parts of it, but this is a very influential film
Oh, yes.
on Mexican horror and
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
meaning to like
no, I
diss
think
it
we
in
all
a
love it the
negative
same.
way.
Yeah, no, we just all wish we all have in our mind something that we wish would happen. And
Do you know-
it's kind of disappointing when it doesn't. But yeah, but I just mean that it's hugely influential. And so if you had to pick a film about El Santo to remake, I think this would be a good one.
Easily the most stylish, because
Yeah,
I mean, say what you will.
We just can't let Hollywood get a hold of it because they'll gas The Rock
Right.
or John Cena.
Oh no.
No, you would have all of Mexico up in arms if you did that.
Yeah.
They'd be
Yeah.
like, oh, we got plenty of luchadores.
Yeah, I was gonna say you have to cast a luchador for that. You have to.
Can you imagine how horrible that would be if suddenly you didn't even cast a Mexican in
Well,
the role?
It would be unsurprising, to be honest with you.
No,
Yeah.
you're right. You're
Well,
right,
it would be John Cena rescuing Miley Cyrus's Diana.
That
Oh
makes
my
me so
God.
sad.
I'm sorry.
And so-
Actually, I take that back. Scarlett Johansson.
Scarlett Johansson be playing El Santo. Yes.
yes, of course.
All right, you want to hear
She's
something
like,
strange?
well, I learned all the moves when I was doing the Black Widow. I can handle it.
Yes.
I speak
Damn
Spanish.
it.
Uh,
Yeah, that sounds
All right.
about right.
when I started watching this movie as a kid, this used to play on a thing, and you guys may not remember this at all, but there was a guy called Commander USA on USA, right?
Oh yeah.
And they played cheap or free movies. This was how they filled like a 2-hour block every Saturday morning. Was Commander USA would show, a lot of, and so they were doing a lot of K. Gordon Murray dubs of Mexican vampire stuff. And I was so young that I didn't get that they were dubbed at all. I didn't understand that in the slightest. And these movies didn't bother like with mouth flaps or anything. It's just straight dubbing, and it doesn't have to match. And so to me, this is going to sound so strange and silly, but to me, there was something magic about them. It was like they were a vision into another world where things were different, and the fact that voices didn't match made it dreamlike. I swear to God, this is really what I thought. Like there was just something super special about how completely bonkers and poorly made. It didn't occur to me that it was bad. I thought it was like a different kind of good. Which actually, I guess, is how
It is a different kind of good, frankly.
It's a different kind of good. Yeah, for me, I guess that's still the case, actually. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'm just thinking right now about this hypothetical remake of it. El Santo's son, El Hijo del Santo, is a luchador. So, like, if they were to remake it, they'd have to get his son to play him.
How old can he be?
He's like 55, something like that, right now.
Oh, he's a lot younger than I.
Yeah,
he's a lot younger than I would think. Jeez,
yeah. No,
that's
I mean, he had him
amazing.
late in life.
Oh.
In this film, I guess El Santo was like in his mid 40s, like 44, 45, something like that.
He doesn't seem very old at all.
He was born in like 1917, though. It's strange if you think about it. Yeah.
My father-in-law has for years hinted that the one thing that he wants for a birthday or for something, and it becomes less and less likely every year, is he wants some Santo comics from when he was a kid. And very particularly, he wants the ones that were in the digest style,
Oh, yeah, the historietas, yeah.
And some of them were fumetti and so forth. But you know how hard, like from the 50s, in other words.
Yeah.
And man, those things have rotted away in somebody's trunk
Or
decades ago.
they're like super, super expensive. And
Yeah, if you find any, let me know.
I was hoping that you were going to say that it'd come back around. He wants a Santo birthday party. Like he
he wants a Santo piñata.
Yeah, he wants him to come out and
Yeah,
a mask.
Oh my God, he would be.
Which I kind of want that too, but
he would be so excited to see El Santo. Just greet him at the country club.
Hire some random dude. Denver. There have to be Santo impersonators in Denver. Come on.
There have to be. Oh no, this is Houston. So
that's right. He lives in Houston. I keep forgetting. That's right.
Yeah. So
I mean,
there's
even more likely.
Yes. El Doctor, I am here to say happy birthday.
Oh no, is that vampire women behind you? And he proceeds to save your father-in-law from vampire.
I think it's a wonderful idea. But
I think we hit upon a new like business model here. We can just have like El Santo birthday parties where we have like vampire women come in for him to fight. And
oh my God, my husband would want that 100%.
There's a Mexican.
I think having vampire women in a birthday party is a good idea.
No, I recommend it. I'm
down with that at any birthday party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a Mexican restaurant in Denver that Julia, the lovely Julia, who's usually with us, hates. I mean, she just hates it because the food is not her favorite thing. But it is like old, and they have cliff divers, and they have skits and people in gorilla suits, and like.
Are you talking about Casa Bonita?
Jason, what's it called? Jason keeps dropping in and out, so he's probably dropped out again.
Oh no.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes,
we can hear you now.
Okay. All right. Dawn, come a little closer to the mic, and I'll. When did I drop out?
Right after I asked you if she was talking about Casa Bonita.
Yes. Okay. So yes, Casa Bonita, as seen on South Park, right? Anyway, there are places you can eat in there where it is like you are in a Mexican village in the 50s. You know, it like you are walking into a Cantinflas movie. I mean, it is, and I mean, that would be the perfect place to have a party with like Mexican vampire women and luchadores. Honestly, by the way, if any of you guys come back to Denver, we all have to go to Casa Bonita.
I want to go. I'm there. So many people.
I've been there. I've actually I lived in Colorado for a number of years. I have been to Casa Bonita. It is exactly as advertised.
Yes.
That's the kind of place I at least want to go once. Like,
yes,
you kind of have to.
Oh my God. So where did we leave off? Okay, so they are the vampires are stalking Diana, and she's beginning to get worried because she's seeing them in the windows, and all the men in her life continue to tell her, you know, go rest. You seem overtired. Don't worry about any of this. And the police, as far as I can work out, come up with a plan to catch the vampires by going to her usual nightclub and waiting for them to show up.
Well, no, they realized that so two groups of people, because in addition to stalking Diana, the vampire women are bringing back. They're henchmen, but the henchmen and Tundra are going out and finding victims and bringing them back to the crypt so that everybody can be rejuvenated, or like their illusory power can work, whatever. And so, since they keep killing people near this club, the police chief, deduces logically that it must be relatively close to where they are, and so they're, and a lot of people are there in this film that otherwise has like 2-3 people in it.
Yes.
So they're like, so the police chief, Carlos, I guess, do they call him Charles in English? That's so stupid. It's Carlos.
Charles and Charlie.
Oh my God.
Wait, so I have to know this because, okay, so is Diana's fiance's actual name Jorge? Because in American version he's George, and I was like, I bet his fucking name is Jorge.
Right, his name is Jorge.
I knew it.
Okay.
I knew it.
So it's Inspector Carlos, Professor Orloff, Jorge. It's just so ridiculous. Yeah, so he's Jorge.
George. They call him
George and
Diana.
Charlie. Oh, and it's Diana. Yeah. So
Diana in the
yeah, of course, because it's just too hard to say Diana, right? So Carlos is like, hey, I got a great idea. You're in danger in your house anyway with Professor Gaslight. So why don't you and Jorge just go sit in this club and we'll watch on the outside. And if like some vampires come along, then we'll catch them. Everybody's like, oh, dude, all right, I guess that makes sense. Rather than sitting around here, and the professor's still like, would she be safe here while I'm translating these hieroglyphics? And he's like, no, dude, she's not safe with you. So they take her there, and lo and behold, of course, because you have to love the bat effects. We haven't talked about the bats. So they turn into bats and they go into the club and they transform back into women. Because Queen Sorina wants to come and take a look at this, her successor, right? She wants to see her, because what we haven't talked about is at the birthday party, Tundra and one of the henchmen like are able to come in because they do some mesmerizing. Well, first they kill a pair of people who, and I guess take their invitations, and they go in and they mesmerize, and then they're about to abscond with Diana, but that's when Santo shows up and he does some wrestling moves and defeats the henchmen, and they get Diana back.
It is wonderful that the henchmen are also wrestling. I mean, that is my favorite thing about the universe that this film takes place in, where luchador as a concept is like one of the preeminent concepts, like atomic power. Things just orient themselves around being a luchador.
All monstrous henchmen of a necessity have to be luchadores. Like it's like everybody's like, pero pues obvio. I mean, obviously, any self-respecting henchman is gonna know how to. He's gonna know all different holes.
It's an organizing principle. Yeah. It's like unstable molecules in the Marvel universe. It is a thing that this world circles around. Is you're gonna get a mask and you're gonna have big. These guys are big. They're bigger than Santo. These are big dudes.
Yeah, they're big guys. They really are big guys. So this time their plan, I mean, basically works. They Santos, he shows up, but it's like at the last minute, and they've already taken off with Diana or whatever. I mean, so we can kind of like quickly move to the end where.
Oh yes. Thank you for doing the plot of this film. By the way, it's so funny to me. I've seen this movie several times. I couldn't tell you the plot to save my own life.
Now, one of the things I love about this movie is there's a little bit of self-referential stuff to it. So all at the lovely stuff at the beginning, that first 15, 20 minutes that we all are in love with, the very stately movements and so forth, where, Tundra is taking the chalice and she's walking slowly down into the crypt and they slowly bleed their victim and she goes back. All this stuff is really great. But at the end, the sun is about to rise, and there's this one part where Tundra's starting to move really slow, and Queen Sordina tells her, and it sounds great in Spanish. She's basically like, "You need to hurry it up. The sun is about to rise. Get a move on."
Yeah,
because she's doing this legion. They're like, "Bitch, move! What are you doing?"
Yes. Yeah,
but
I know this isn't the dialogue, but I really, really wanted to be
Ándale, muévete. Yeah, it would have been hilarious. But instead, she's like, using very proper stately Spanish.
Right, yeah.
But it's so lovely. And then, so even after her queen has told her, "Get your ass in gear," she's down there and she's like, "Well, let's finally unmask this person who we've been, what? This is the first time you've seen this guy,
Right.
And I love how the real hero of the movie is the vampire's inability to move quickly, because they literally run out the clock till dawn, and then the sunlight starts coming in, sets Tundra on fire. Santo breaks free, beats up on the ghouls a little bit. They get set on fire, and then he grabs a torch and just blazes the place.
Okay, were you a little disturbed? I'm not trying to be
It was disturbing. The way he
it's
does
it's a little disturbing. The violence of him just setting them all on fire is.
Oh no, it's awful.
Yeah,
I mean, he's downstairs with a torch, just setting each individual casket on fire while the women are screaming and screaming and screaming. He's burning them at the stake, is what he's doing.
Yeah, well, as I was telling Dawn, I mean, he went full freaking Louis from Interview with a Vampire when he found out that Kristen got all burnt up. Because that's what it felt like running wild through the chambers and just dooming all the vampires.
Yes, no, that's really strange. I mean, I get that they're bad guys.
A little sociopathic to me, a little psychopathic. The way he was just uncaringly, not even flinching, just lighting them on fire and going to the next casket and lighting the next one on fire and opening them up.
He also looked at his watch and realized that he was out of time, and then he had to wrap it up really super quick. And then, okay, what's the quickest way we can get through all of these people and get them killed and get to the end of our movie?
No, that's exactly it. There was clearly no thought put into this at all, because when you think about it, a person of compassion would be slightly troubled by setting all of these sleeping murderers. They're murderers, I get that. But setting them all aflame, you wouldn't be so quick to do it unless you were a true sociopath. But I think the answer is exactly what you said, which is that nobody gave this a thought. This is this is their monsters.
And the thing is, they do nothing to defend themselves, which makes it really hard. If they were fighting back and lashing out at him, and he was having to push them back in, then there would be like feel different. But they just pass it. They have to go into their coffins because the sun is out, and they're completely defenseless. And he just like sets them on fire. And so it's hard for you to feel like, oh, this is a heroic thing that you're doing. It doesn't.
Well, and that's where the fundamental. I mean, that's where the conservatism of the movie comes in when you think about it, because like we've often said, the beauty of these movies is their sort of hard-ass Catholicism, right? Their sort of clear delineation of good and evil. But if you actually follow that to its logical conclusion, you're going to set some witches on fire, and this movie actually does that. So it's like
think about that once. Yeah, sure. There's that one really, really great scene that we didn't talk about where as during the second attack, as Santo shows up in his car and then he goes off chasing one of the henchmen who's doing his "I'm a little boy with a cape flying around my backyard" routine.
Oh God, I love
it. Love it. Yeah.
And he's running on the street and suddenly he stops and he looks up and there's this cross and he just fucking burst into flame. It's beautiful. It was so well done. Like they try to do it with some of the other vampires, doesn't work quite as well. But right there, the transition, it was like perfect. It was like, wow, that was amazing. I rewound it a couple of times, like, damn, that was really, really well done. And then and Santo like gets out of his car and he walks over and he like just looks down and then he walks away. It was a really cool scene. I was like, yeah, that's pretty iconic. I could see, getting excited about that if you were a kid and watching it.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. I'm the more I think about it, the more I think it would be really interesting to do. See, we were talking about remakes. If you could do a remake that somehow managed to catch the beauty of those scenes, of those like satanic ritual scenes, without making it too jokey, I don't think you can avoid irony. I mean, even the witch has certain elements that are meant to make you sort of think about yourself being modern in relation to them, right? So there's always going to be a little bit of reflectiveness about it. But having said that, the only way it would work is
midsummer version of this, like to have
right. And there's all kinds of humor in Midsummer, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it's still like deadly serious, and it would just have
the new Suspiria for you can take what you like or don't like, but
I love
it. All of the ritual stuff looked amazing.
Yes, yeah. No, that's absolutely right, and it does. It takes it extremely seriously. I'm trying to think of another example.
An original Suspiria, for that matter, which I prefer, but
right. And both of those also have lots of moments that are so absurd that they make you laugh. The thing is, you have to be willing to do an absurd thing that will make people laugh without kind of losing control of the vehicle. This is something that I think Stephen King does at his best. That he can do something like suddenly a wind-up chattering tooth thing can be coming after a hippie in a van, and it's so absurd that the hippie thinks it's funny, but it's also scary. You have to be able to do that sort of thing if you're going to have wrestlers with fangs, which I think you must have. And then yes. You have to just sort of embrace it. But
Santo, well, there is wrestlers with fangs in the latest Hellboy, but that's not saying a lot because that movie's.
I didn't see the latest Hellboy.
Either
did anybody?
I don't think anybody saw it. That was kind of the problem.
I did, and it was.
That's sort of sad. It makes me sad.
No, that's me too.
I mean, David Harbour, right? Cool. You would think.
Yeah. There's parts that are actually cool, but it does not gel well, in my opinion. It's a shame because there are some really great parts, and I remember coming out of the theater going, I wish it had been all of those parts, and that would have been cool. But that didn't happen, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah. Hey, do you guys?
But there's a wrestling scene in Mexico that's actually.
Oh right, yeah. Oh, that's right. I did read about that. I completely forgot about that. Okay, question about this Mexican vampire movie, like The Bloody Vampire, is also one of my favorites. El Vampiro, which we wanted to do and we can't find it, but all these great movies. But to me, the black and whiteness of it is literally. I'm not talking about figurative, but the fact that the movie's in black and white. I think if this movie were in color, I lose interest. There are, I don't think it would. It just somehow it's not as. This thing needs to be in black and white, kind of to complete the package.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you. And then I want to point out something that, of course, doesn't come across in the dub version, but the way everybody is talking and behaving is out of step with the way Mexico actually is in 1962. So they're using like kind of stilted language of the sort that you would have maybe heard it in films from 30 years before this, or something out of like a 19th century novel. It's not just the way the vampires are speaking to each other, because they're using even more flowery language, but just the way the professor and Inspector Carlos talk to each other is really, I mean, it's like they're trying to make, one of these quasi, like
a fairy tale in a sense.
Yeah, but like the Universal films that are set in like some kind of, time outside of time. But they also have like 1950s cars in the streets and telephones. But the dialogue itself and the kind of atmosphere they're trying to create. And just think about like the mask ballish kind of birthday party thing they have.
Yes.
None of it feels like it's happening in 1962. All this feels like it's happening decades earlier, or maybe even a century earlier, except for the anachronistic, technology and things like that. So
yeah, she dresses up as Esmeralda from the Hunchback. Well, I mean, that's very similar to, say, the Hammer movies, although those were all costume dramas, those were all period pieces. But it's very similar in that, you had, the language was always much more formal than the way that people would actually talk to one another. I love that because it hypnotizes you in a sense into kind of forgetting exactly where you are. Into like you said, into a time out of time.
Yeah,
I interrupted
really pulls you in. It really draws you in. Like even the dub being what it was, with all of its inconsistencies and weird things, they still tried to a certain extent to keep a slightly heightened language, like especially with the professor.
Yeah.
And anytime he started talking about the legend, and most especially with the vampires, who honestly felt like they wandered in from another movie.
Yes.
Which I think was great. I mean, it just really it sort of set them apart from the rest of the cast. These were very clearly people from a different time wearing 1960s cleavage fancy dresses.
Yes. Yes. It is funny. And by the way, the cultists, the women who are not the bosses, Zarina and Tundra, who are both, by the way, their variance runs from tall to slightly taller. They're two brown-headed, beautiful, lovely women in white dresses. I mean, they're almost precisely the same. But they have all of these henchmen, and the funny thing is, those people don't do anything. They don't attack anybody. They don't. Once again, I feel bad about the fact that Santo murders all of them. You can't, as you rethink vampirism, though. This is one of the difficult things about that The Witch deals with so well. I can't believe I'm talking about The Witch so much, and I apologize, because this is more than I've thought about that movie in like 2 years. But it doesn't whitewash what the witches in that universe do, which is to say that they grind babies' bones and make salve out of it. And in this case, vampires kill people. It's not like we've made them into vegetarian vampires or anything. But nevertheless, there are the bosses and the non-bosses. Okay, let's get our final thoughts, and then I want to get to endorsements, like whatever you guys have to share with us that you should totally see or do or watch. So what order did we go in? I think it was Tony, Dawn, David, and Jen. So Tony, final thoughts. El Santo versus, what a way to kick off October, right? El Santo versus the Vampire Women.
Oh, like I said, I really dig it. I am a little envious that that David watched it in Spanish, because I prefer that with subtitles if possible. But yeah, masked wrestlers versus vampires. I'm gonna be down with that magic anytime. And it's such a part. I watched Nail in the Coffin, the Fall and Rise of Vampiro, who is a famous luchador who came from Canada at Fantastic Fest, and they talk a lot about how prevalent lucha is in just ingrained in the culture now. And so
Mm-hmm.
going back all the way back to here, this the fact that there's a guy in a silver mask who's gonna right the wrongs that are being done, and then he's always in a mask. Like I just love that even when he's in formal wear, it's like the mask is part of him.
Yes.
And that ingrained in the pop culture is we have WWF, but it's not like that, you know? And that is amazing. But the fact that they also were like, well, he's gonna fight vampires this time. We're gonna have really awesome vampy women, and these wrestler guys who are gonna fight him as well in their black tunics. I don't know. It all works for me. I'm totally down with any kind of combo of this stuff.
Very cool. Thank you. Dawn, what are your thoughts?
I super enjoyed this movie. It's just such a great example of, and I said it at the beginning, it's just such a great example of the movies that they were bringing over. And while it was imperfect, it still was just such a great little microcosm of what those movies were, the Santo movies and Luchador in general, and bringing it back. Like, I think you mentioned USA Commander. Like, I remember watching those on Saturday mornings, and just there's something just very pristine and honest about these movies, and I really enjoyed it, for all of its obvious flaws.
Yeah.
But it was just so much fun. It really was.
David, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun revisiting this film. I really enjoyed it. I've just recently just been thinking about these types of like quasi satanic horror films from this time period, and after seeing like Midsummer and listening to a whole bunch of like Ghost and other bands, I don't know, just have this like I'm like wrapping up for October for Halloween and Dia de los Muertos, and it's just something I like to do, and so it was like the perfect thing. It's of a kind. There's nothing like it in American cinema, and not a whole lot of like it in Mexican cinema either. A lot of really good stuff, and I should save this for endorsements, but I do want to point out that there is like a quasi sequel to this. It's not really a sequel, but it's a film also it's called The Revenge, Santo and the Revenge of the Vampire Women, where a mad scientist brings back to life a vampire woman. And
I've seen The Treasure of Dracula.
Yeah,
I've never seen the
this is a 3D film from 1970 called La Venganza de las Mujeres Vampiro, the Revenge of the...
Oh my God.
Ooh, I
wow.
want to see that.
Yeah,
By the way, I also, for Fire Shark Productions, I have another idea, David, that we should collaborate on, which is a buddy movie where a U.S. wrestler has to come to Mexico, team up, totally fish out of water, team up with a Santo-style luchador and fight evil.
That would be really, really cool. Yeah,
that would be awesome. We should write that at some point.
I'm down for it. I think it would be great. I think it could be very successful. And interestingly, when you bring up like buddy films, there were a bunch of buddy films between Santo and Blue Demon.
Man, I want to see more of those.
Those are really great. It's fantastic stuff.
Yeah, there's one called Santo and the Blue Demon Meet the Monsters, I think it's called. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I've seen that. I used to have a clipped CD of Santo, because when Sophia was a baby, she used to really enjoy watching Santo movies, and which is so sad because she's 17 now, and I couldn't make her watch a Santo movie to save her. But Jen, take me out of my funk. Go ahead. What are your thoughts?
Yes. I also wish I would have been able to see the Spanish language version of this, because the American dub just made me wish I was watching the original language. But I did really enjoy this film visually, and like I said, if there was a different version of it where the ending wasn't so regressive and 1962,
right. Yeah.
I would just really love that. But I'm for 1962 for the fact that the beginning is as holy crap, there's this coven of witches and they're after this woman to be their new queen. Like, I love that base plot. That's incredible. Avoiding the gaslighting dad and the shitty, husband and all that. Just the fact there's this coven of vampire witches just made me very happy. So for that alone, it gets A+ marks for me. And also, I mean, Santo is classic. It was really entertaining for me because when I would check out during the wrestling matches, that's what my husband was watching it with us, and he loves lucha and he loves wrestling. He loves both.
Really?
And he's
cool.
huge fan. That's like we had both. Our wedding was horror themed, but when he came down the aisle, he had a wrestling intro. So like wrestling is like his thing.
I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That
So
is
like
really
he
cool.
was calling the match while we were watching the movie.
That's awesome.
So like Don and I would kind of like stop paying as much attention, and Bear would just be like, and there's Santo with an arm bar.
Now I kind of want to see that version now.
Yeah.
Really, that was entertaining. Made the wrestling more entertaining was hearing my husband call the match.
Pretty great.
Can I ask a stupid lucha question? Are they allowed to punch one another? Is that
It's all
something?
the regular kind of wrestling. Like if you've seen pro wrestling, it's kind of that. I mean, there's punches and everything, but they're more that kind of stagey.
So
but not.
I guess,
it doesn't ever turn into boxing. I mean,
that's why you have
boxing.
In Santo's fighting with the pinchmen, they are like literally just like punching each other and chopping each other.
Punching one another in the stomach, and they're doing body blows.
Yeah.
And I was like,
in the first match,
even in the fiction of wrestling within the fiction of the movie,
you're only supposed to do that if you're one of the like the dirty fighters. If you're a rudo, if you're a técnico, you're not supposed to do that because you're supposed to be like cleaner and more professional and stuff like that. And so
the heel versus the good guy. Yeah,
there you go. And so it was really weird to see Santo behaving like a rudo in that first match. You're like, damn, dude, you're doing some messed up shit.
I love the moment, by the way, when Santo goes. You mentioned it earlier because it says he's using karate on me. I just love how he talks like Batman, basically. But there's this moment where he goes, "That's not Black Mask," because he's used to the heel that he normally deals with, and he goes, "That's that." Yeah, I don't know. And likewise,
his voice in Spanish is just so great as well. Santo. I mean, it's dubbed over. It's dubbed by him, but it's obviously dubbed over, or he's like just there in a booth somewhere, and he's like speaking like very carefully, reading from a script, and it is very, very Batman-esque. It's hilarious.
It's wonderful. Fantastic. So this is the moment for those of you who are new here, when I turn to everybody and ask, what would you like to endorse? I mean, it's an opportunity to bring attention to art that you've come across that you think needs some attention, or sometimes it's art that is already getting all the attention in the world. You just have to say, I completely agree, or whatever. So same order. Tony, I don't know. You just watched 35 movies. It's almost too much to ask. But
I'll try to give the highlights.
Okay.
There's a lot, and I saw a lot of good stuff, and I'm gonna be doing a write-up as well. Several things. I'm just gonna rattle off, and anything else I'm gonna put links on our Facebook page. First and foremost, I was able to see Color Out of Space. Richard Stanley, who did Hardware and is a really fascinating person in addition to being a really great director. He has adapted and modernized Lovecraft's Color Out of Space. And also giving agency to women and minorities, which in the Q&A was like, that was very planned in order to counteract Lovecraft's crappy politics and misogyny, and just for all the cool stuff he wrote, he was not a favorite person as far as and not progressive. So Richard Stanley and Nick Cage is in it, and he's reeling it in a little bit, and not just kind of the Nick Cage we've seen over the past couple of years where it's just you kind of hire him to chew the scenery with iron teeth. And I really like Color Out of Space. I am going to, let's see. I got to see Black Pit of Dr. M, which is a classic Mexican horror film. I also saw Ship of Monsters, which I recommend, and Trampa Infernal, which is a Vietnam War vet with a sort of Michael Myers mask and a Freddy glove, terrorizing people in the 80s. That movie was not as classic, but it was enjoyable nonetheless.
Is it from the 80s? That's a
yes.
movie that...
Oh, yes.
Awesome.
And then one thing that was really cool and is our friend Kayla Janice, who does tons of cool stuff, a really awesome voice for horror, has a thing called Miskatonic Institute, and there's several branches, and they brought Abraham Castillo Flores to give a survey of Mexican fantasy and horror cinema.
Really?
He runs, he calls it the Morbido Crypts Guide to Mexican Fantasy. He runs the Morbido Fest, and it was fantastic. And I wrote down like dozens of movies to watch. So I have my work cut out for me as far as Mexican cinema goes. And he was the presenter of a lot of these films, gave an awesome survey, all around cool person. Really worth checking out all of that stuff. It was really great. Like there's gonna be a lot more. I don't want to go too long, but you'll be hearing about Fantastic Fest a lot, because out of 30 something movies, there were many. Memory of Alien, all about Memory, the Origin of Alien, was also really good documentary. I don't know. There's just so much, but everybody will be hearing about it. But Color Out of Space and seeing the Mexican cinema that I was talking about, I think I'll stop there for now, and then we'll try to spread this out. I also anticipate we'll be doing some interviews with some of the filmmakers. I'm lining all that up now because I wasn't able to do as much of that this time around as I had in the past.
That's fantastic, though. It sounds like you had a really good week at Fantastic Fest.
Yeah, I mean, if that's not for everyone, Jen was there too. Dawn, you were there too, right?
Yeah, very briefly.
Yeah. So, it's not everybody's bag to see close to 40 movies in a week, but I'm down for that. I would do that more. Tomorrow, going back to work is going to be a kind of a letdown.
I bet. All right. Well. Dawn, what do you have to endorse for us?
Cool. So obviously I'm going to plug our podcast just very briefly here. We're going to be coming back with regular episodes in October.
Awesome.
Kicking off our Halloween season properly. So we're going to be coming back with regular episodes. We've got t-shirts and merch. But since Fantastic Fest is apparently a theme, I'm going to go ahead and plug one of the few films I got to see, which was Bliss.
I missed it. I'm so mad.
Yeah, it was directed by Joe Begos, and the cast was in attendance. It was a really eyeball-melting experience. It's definitely one of those movies that is not going to be for everyone. Like, even just in our small friends group, when we came out of that movie, some of us were like, oh, we love it. And others were like, oh, gosh, that was awful. So it's going to be one of those movies that is just going to be very divisive, but I think it was beautiful and loud and punk and crazy, and I really enjoyed it. And also talking about, and it is out now on VOD, so definitely if you get a chance to check that out. On Fantastic Fest Cast, I am so happy to see that One Cut of the Dead is finally available on Shudder.
Yes.
If you haven't seen that, it is a Japanese sort of zombie flick that is just, when you start watching it, it just becomes something completely different from what you thought it was going to be. And it is amazing.
Yeah, Jason, we have to cover that.
Okay.
I cannot agree more with Dawn on this. We absolutely have to. It's a game changer in a lot of ways.
It is so fun. It is so fun. And I highly recommend everybody go see that.
Tony, your wish is my command. No problem. Dawn, thank you. David, what do you have?
So, I've been super busy, so I haven't done too much. But I tell you, I've seen 2 shows this week that I really want to endorse, and one of them is Creepshow on Shudder. The first, I guess this is the first episode, or maybe it's the first 2 episodes recently came out. It's the new TV series based on that idea of from the Creepshow movies, and this first episode was really, really incredible. It's got some incredible actors in it. I was really definitely into the second because it's like an hour-long thing with 2 like mini episodes in it, whatever. So the second one, which is what is it called, the Head in the House, or The House with the Head, or whatever, is about this little girl in her dollhouse, and something creepy and weird is going on inside of her dollhouse. It's really, really great. And then I also saw, surprisingly, because it's CBS, this new series called Evil. I was not going to watch it, and then I read a review of it saying it's really good, and I watched it, and I liked it a lot. So, CBS is not known for its contributions to this particular genre, but Evil, I highly recommend. And then if you haven't seen the Netflix show Unbelievable, holy shit! I mean, I had already listened to a podcast about this case of this young woman who was raped, and trying to get people in her life to believe her. Like, she was gaslighted to the point of retracting her statement, and then being taken to court for giving like a false statement and saying that she was raped. And in reality, she was, and he was a serial rapist who went on to rape like multiple women. And it's only because these two female police officers, these two detectives, began working together. They're from different towns, whatever, and they discovered this thing. It's an incredible miniseries on Netflix with amazing actors, and definitely a trigger warning for people who have issues with watching that sort of stuff. But if you can sit through it, you will be so angry all the time, but you will also just be blown away at the performances. And this is like a true life story. So like the way these detectives like find the truth out about this guy is amazing. So I highly recommend it.
That's fabulous. Thank you. Jen, what about you?
Yeah. I agree with Dawn. We saw Bliss together and we both loved it. So I'll agree with her on that. Enjoyed the hell out of that movie. We already mentioned Tigers Are Not Afraid by Issa Lopez, but I'll mention it again. Definitely, if people have not seen that movie, they need to see it, because we are actually going to be doing our interview with Issa Lopez about that movie on our podcast within the next few months, or by the end of the year, hopefully.
Cool.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so definitely watch that movie in preparation, because we've been wanting to do that episode for 2 years.
Yeah, this is where you get to picture the remaking this film. So
that's right.
Remember
that's
that.
right.
Exactly.
You can just put that in her head.
And then aside from that, the two movies that I want to talk about at Fantastic Fest that don't have distribution yet, so I'm not going to go into it, but I just want to mention them because they need to be checked out, are Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street, which is the Nightmare on Elm Street documentary all about Mark Patton and Freddy's Revenge, Nightmare on Elm Street 2. And then Knives and Skin by Jennifer Reeder, which is like a feminist retelling of Laura Palmer. It's like fucking incredible. Both of those movies are absolutely out of this world. We will 100% be covering those on the podcast when they come out. And I was also a big fan of After Midnight with Bria Grant. It's like the best performance she's ever had. It's this really cute love story monster movie that is like what we don't get very frequently, which is an adorable horror film. But it's also well made. It's not like twee. It's just that it's sweet. And it's also deep too. It covers real shit. I was very impressed with After Midnight, to be honest with you. The script on that, holy shit. Anyway, those movies I was really, really a big fan of as far as the independent showings at Fantastic Fest. And for television, real quick, if you're not watching Los Spookies and you have HBO, watch Los Spookies, watch Los Spookies, watch Los Spookies. It's so fun. I love it. It makes me so happy. The very first episode, there is a goth quinceañera, and I'm like, oh my God, if my family had the money to have a quinceañera, that would have been my quinceañera. So incredible. And then Dragula as well on Amazon Prime. Season 3 just started. And a dear friend of mine, Louisiana Purchase, is one of the queens competing this year, and he is killing it, and I'm so proud of him. And aside from that, they also the Boulet Brothers Drag Race is a horror themed drag show, and unlike RuPaul, they fully acknowledge that drag includes cis women and drag kings. So there's a drag king and there's a bio queen on this season of Dragula, which is like, yes. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, educate yourself. If you do know what I'm talking about, then you know how big of a deal this is.
Awesome.
So season 3 of Dragula, like, my husband and I have been enjoying the shit out of it. And my friend Louisiana Purchase is just killing it right now. I really, really hope I mean, I don't know because they can't say. I think he's gonna be in the like top 3. But that's just because they're my friend and they're amazing, and so that's what I think is gonna happen. But I do not know if that's what's gonna happen. Only like 5 episodes has come out, but like that's what I wanna definitely. If people
And it's on
haven't
Amazon
seen
Prime,
Dragula
right?
or Los Spookies, like
Yep.
get on that.
Drew is a huge
By the
fan.
way,
He's a huge fan of Los Spookies. Go ahead, Tony.
By the way, I'm with Jen. Scream Queen was really heartfelt and heartbreaking as well.
Yes.
And since we covered Nightmare 2, I need to go back and listen to that because I think we covered some of that, but
Actually, Tony, I don't know if we have.
Did we? Oh, did
I'm
we
not sure if I don't think
Oh.
we've done an episode of Nightmare 2. No, huh?
Oh.
We are going to interview the guy, the author
Mark
of Scream
Patton.
Queen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man,
That-
it's really just something else, and just again, it's heartbreaking, and also seeing how it kind of plays out. I don't want to give too much away. Is something else, like and seeing how many people the movie affected. Yeah, Jen, you're totally right, and I'm sad now that several people afterwards have said After Midnight was really great, but that's the problem that's the embarrassment of riches of Fantastic Fest.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna see something and go, why didn't I catch that? I saw this, but it was pretty good, but it sounds like I should have seen that. And I don't know. Did you have that same thing this year, especially?
Oh, I definitely did, but that's because I only got to see 8 movies.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I wasn't able. Yeah, I couldn't do. Dawn and I couldn't do the festival proper this year because we have been doing the podcast at like at Dragon Con and at Galaxy Con at a few different conventions. So it's eaten up our time off from our normal jobs.
Yeah.
Or specifically Dawn's time off from her normal job. I have more flexibility than she does. But I still also had just taken off a lot of time for cons. I'm about to take 2 weeks off for going to Australia. So we couldn't really afford to take off an entire week for Fantastic Fest this year. So we just did the midnight badges. And then I did standby for movies that I was just free. Like whenever I was available and not working, I would come down and try to sit on standby. So I managed to catch 8 movies and was lucky. And every single one I saw, I liked. But I definitely missed out on a bunch. I wanted to see Swallow. All my friends were raving about Swallow, and I didn't get to see it. And Dawn, according to everyone, we need to see that fucking movie. Apparently, we really need to see that movie.
I need to see it as well, so you're not alone in that.
Okay,
it was really, really tough this year, actually. There were a lot of conflicts where I wish I get a little bit of a reprieve because the screeners library doing press stuff.
Right.
But it's still, there were some really tough slots. I mean, tough in the best possible way. Like you're gonna see an awesome movie or another awesome movie.
Yeah, I mean, we usually have in years past when we usually are press, we've had screener access, but since we weren't able to apply for press this year,
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I buy a badge anyway, so it's one of those things. Did you see Nail in the Coffin as well?
No, I missed that one.
Oh yeah, so that's another one since it ties into this. Nail in the Coffin, The Fall and Rise of Vampiro, and I mentioned that before.
Yeah.
I had the action figure of Vampiro. It's like it translates to the Vampire of Canada. And I was like, who is this guy? A Canadian guy who's also a vampire with this kind of crow type makeup on, and he started dating he said he wasn't that great of a wrestler, but he started dating movie stars, and because of the circle he was in, he got more and more popular and was really popular with the ladies, and he had a cool look, kind of a rock star look, and became this crossover hit, and it's kind of his, and like with anything,
he looks kind of like the Misfits. I mean, he has sort
at
of
the time. And it's also there's a core element of him now directing wrestling and trying to be a good dad and taking over as a dad. So there's a really great part of it that's him balancing this career and this life with his past of maybe not being the greatest, maybe husband or father, and then trying to rectify that and his dealing with his own stuff. It was really cool, and he was there. The directors were there. It was but it ties in directly to this episode. When it comes out, if you can see it, Nail in the Coffin, The Fall and Rise of Vampiro. I also recommend that because it does dovetail into this, and it does more. It has more about Lucha as well. So
Vampiro, got it. Canadiense. How cool is that? I got one thing that I want to point out. Emily Nussbaum, who's a writer for the New York Times, has been tweeting today something that some of my friends were commenting on a couple of months ago, and just I never get over is 9 to 5, which you could get on Amazon Prime, never runs out of relevance. Ever, which is both awesome and depressing. If you watch 9 to 5,
Ray's watched it more than a few times, and
there is literally nothing in 9 to 5 that doesn't translate today perfectly. You can just watch it and go, oh, it turns out life has not remotely changed since 1981. Other than some of the office technology and the complete unemployment of most of the people on the secretary's floor in that movie, because they don't have a secretarial pool of like 65 people anymore in an office like that. Other than that, it's fascinating. If you haven't seen 9 to 5 because you're like one of our younger listeners, go check it out and you will be astonished. So, yep. Oh, and of course, if you watch Grace and Frankie, it has 2 of the stars of that show in the movie. So yeah. All right. That brings us to the end of our discussion, our wide-ranging discussion of Santo versus the Vampire Women. I am so thankful to our guests, Jen and Dawn, who took the time out to join us.
Dawn.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah,
And
thank y'all. We had a lot of fun.
I'm glad. I'm really glad, and we've really enjoyed your show. So I hope we come up with a way to do this again in the future, and maybe do it live somewhere. I think that would
that'd be
super
rad.
awesome.
Oh, that would be really nice.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So everybody, have a wonderful week. Be kind to one another, and make it a week to remember. And come to the Facebook page. Let us know your thoughts, and we'll talk to you all soon. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Good evening.